This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, very good morning to one and all. Today we'll discuss regarding anatomy of the triangles of the neck and some differential diagnosis of the swellings in the neck. So, triangles of the neck. First, you have to remember this one. Okay, just remember the images. So the boundaries will be very easily remembered. This is the anterior triangle and this one is the posterior triangle. Okay, just remember the basics thing, anterior and the posterior. So now we'll see the boundaries. So anterior triangle boundaries are laterally the sternocleidomastoid muscle. See, laterally the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, medially the midline, and superiorly the mandible. Okay. Next, this one. Posterior are medially the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, laterally the trapezius, inferiorly clavicle. So again the theory part, anterior triangle, the boundaries are laterally the sternocleidomastoid muscle, superiorly the inferior border of the mandible, medially the anterior midline of the neck. So again, pictorial representation, you can see here, anterior triangle, okay, midline, sternocleidomastoid muscle, and the inferior border of the mandible. Posterior triangle, clavicle, posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and the anterior border of the trapezius muscle. So this is the anterior, this is the posterior. Now coming to the subdivisions. So we have seen the broad divisions. This one is the anterior triangle and this is the posterior triangle. So again the anterior triangle and the posterior triangle are divided. Okay. So the anterior triangle are again divided into submental, submandibular or digastric, carotid, muscular. Coming to the posterior, it is divided into superiorly the occipital triangle, inferiorly this one is the supraclavicular. It is divided by the posterior or inferior belly of omohyoid muscles. Okay, we have to remember this. And this muscle also, the digastric muscle. Okay, these also forms the boundaries. This is the digastric muscle, this is the omohyoid, this is the anterior belly, posterior belly. Anterior belly of omohyoid is present in the anterior triangle, posterior belly is present in the posterior triangle. So again, I'm again repeating the anterior triangle. This one is again divided into submental, submandibular, carotid, muscular. This posterior triangle is again divided into occipital and supraclavicular. So we'll see the boundaries of the each subdivided triangles in this first anterior triangle. Okay. First, the submental triangle. The submental triangle is bounded by anterior belly of the digastric and the mylohyoid and the hyoid. Okay. From the lateral view, we can only see one of the belly. So you have to remember like this. This is one belly. Okay. And there will be another belly like this. Okay. Base will be formed by the hyoid bone. So this triangle is the submental triangle. It formed by the anterior belly of the digastric muscles and base is formed by the hyoid. So what is the floor? Floor constitutes of about mylohyoid muscle. Okay, the same thing is there. Triangle is bounded by the anterior bellies of the digastric and the mylohyoid and the hyoid bone. The base is formed by the body of the hyoid. So, what are the contents present in the submental triangle? These contents are very much important in the neck. So, when you do any surgeries, you have to remember what are the vital structures present there and what structures should be preserved and what structures can be okay without preserving that one. So you have to remember the basic anatomy of the triangles and what are the structures present in each triangle. So what are the contents? And one more thing, this is very much important so that you can draw the differential diagnosis based upon the contents present in that particular triangle. If you see some swelling arriving to your OPD, if you see the swelling in some triangle, then you have to remember what are the structures present in the triangle so that what are the differential diagnosis that can be, you can conclude with that swelling. So contents of the submental triangle. The submental lymph node, of course, 1A. So this submental lymph nodes drains this chin, lower lip central part, adjoining gum, tip of the tongue, and anterior part of the floor of the mouth. So another one more content is the submental veins. Next one is the submandibular triangle or digastric triangle. So what are the boundaries? Okay. So this is bounded by above by the base of the mandible and the mastoid process, posterior inferiorly by the posterior belly of the digastric, anterior inferiorly by the anterior border of the belly of the digastric. See this part. Okay, this is the submandibular triangle or the digastric triangle. You can see this one is the anterior belly of the digastric. This is the posterior belly of the digastric. Okay. This one. This is the triangle. Once again, I am reading. Above by the base of the mandible and the projection of the mastoid process. Posterior inferiorly by the posterior belly of the digastric. Stylohyoid muscles. Anterior inferiorly by the anterior belly of the digastric. Okay. Same. Anterior belly of the digastric, posterior belly of the digastric, mandible, and this mastoid process. This one. Okay. So floor. Next comes the floor. From superficial to deep, there will be mylohyoid muscle with its nerves. You can see here the hyoglossus muscle. Okay. Middle constrictor muscle covering the lower part of the superior constrictor muscle. And there will also be the part of styloglossus muscle. So just remember this image so that it will be very easy for you while writing in your exam and you can remember it for long time if you remember the image. See mylohyoid muscle, hyoglossus, middle constricted, styloglossus muscle. These are the floor. So what are the important structures present in this digastric triangle? Digastric triangle you can also remember, see the both bellies will be forming the two sides. So it's named digastric triangle. So what are the main contents? So when you are operating in that area, in the triangle, you have to remember all the structures. You have to preserve the important vascular structures and the important nerves. So what are they? Facial vein. Okay. Anterior facial vein, the retromandibular vein, part of the facial artery. I think you can see here. The facial vein, the facial artery, okay. Submental branch of the facial artery, the hypoglossal nerve, obviously the lymph nodes present here. Remember this image, gland, facial artery, the submental branch of the facial artery supplying the gland, facial vein, and the hypoglossal nerve. So while you're operating the submandibular gland, you have to remember all this. You have to ligate the facial artery properly. So, basement of the submandibular triangle. Deep portion of the submandibular gland and its Wharton's duct. The lingual nerves. The sublingual vein. Sublingual glands. Hypoglossal nerve. And the submandibular ganglia. You can see here. the lingual vein and the artery, okay, the duct. This is the submandibular ganglion, sublingual duct, sublingual glands, lingual nerve, the deep gland of the submandibular gland. Okay. Next, carotid triangle. So, what are the boundaries of the carotid triangle? Carotid triangle is bounded by posteriorly the sternocleidomastoid, anteriorly the belly of the omohyoid, superiorly posterior belly of the digastric. Floor will be hypoglossus muscle, inferior constrictor of the pharynx, thyrohyoid muscle, middle constrictor of the pharynx, long capitis muscle. Roof will be investing layer of deep cervical fascia. We'll see the image. So this one is the carotid. We can see sternocleidomastoid muscle, the superior or anterior belly of the omohyoid, and the posterior belly of the digastric muscle. So this one. This is the carotid. Once again, we'll read. Posteriorly, the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Anteriorly, the superior belly of the omohyoid muscle. Superiorly, the posterior belly of the digastric muscle. And the floor will be hypoglossus muscle, inferior constricted. Previously, we saw the middle constrictor in the submandibular. So, obviously, after middle will come the inferior constrictor of the pharynx, thyrohyoid muscle, middle constrictor of the pharynx, long capitis muscle. Roof is the investing layer of deep cervical fascia. Okay. So, what are the main contents in this triangle? So, you have to remember bifurcation of the common carotid artery into ICA and ECA, external carotid and the internal carotid. So, some of the branches of the external carotid are also present there, like the superior thyroid artery, lingual artery is directed forward, the facial artery is forward and upward, occipital artery backward and upward, ascending pharyngeal artery directly upward on the medial side of the internal carotid. So, next common is internal jugular vein, the superior thyroid vein, the pharyngeal vein. One more structure is vagus nerve. So you all know the carotid triangle consists of the carotid sheath, and you know there will be one vein, artery and nerve. So these are the three main structures. So when you're operating in the carotid triangle, you have to remember these vital structures. And others are hypoglossal nerve and spinal accessory nerve. In the previous image, if you noted, so you can see this one here. Okay, this one. The IJV, the common carotid divided into external and internal, and there will also be vagus nerve. So this is very important. Okay, how to remember this one. Next, coming to the muscular triangle, bounded anteriorly by the midline, posterior superiorly by the superior belly of the omohyoid, inferiorly by the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. The floor is intrahyoid muscles, superficial sternohyoid and omohyoid, deep will be sternothyroid and thyrohyoid. I'll show you once again in the image. This is the muscular triangle. So one border is by sternocleidomastoid muscle, another is by the anterior belly of the omohyoid, one more is by the midline. So next, coming to the posterior triangle. The posterior triangle boundaries are anteriorly the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Posteriorly, there will be anterior border of the trapezius muscle. Inferiorly, clavicle. Roof will be superficial investing layer of the deep cervical fascia. this part. Okay. Posteriorly, the anterior belly of trapezius, below by the clavicle, anteriorly the posterior belly of the sternocleidomastoid. This is the posterior triangle. So what are the floor constitutes of about prevertebral fascia, muscles, splenius capitis muscle, levator scapulae muscle, and 3 scalene muscles. Okay. You can see here capitis muscle, the levator scapulae muscle, middle scalene muscle, posterior scalene muscle, anterior scalene muscle. In this, and these are the contents. We'll see in the next slide. Brachial plexus and subclavian artery. We'll see in the next slide. So we have already previously seen the posterior triangle is divided into large occipital triangle above and small subclavian or supraclavicular triangle below. This is the occipital triangle. This is the supraclavicular or subclavian triangle. And this is divided by the inferior belly of the omohyoid, posterior or inferior belly of the omohyoid muscle. So the occipital triangle is the larger one and this one is the smaller one. So what are the contents present here? Between the investing fascia and the prevertebral fascia are accessory nerve, spinal accessory nerve 11 and a portion of the external jugular vein. Variably deep within the triangle are the subclavian artery, obviously accompanying vein subclavian vein, cervical nerves, brachial plexus, phrenic nerve, accessory phrenic nerve, spinal accessory nerve, and the lymph nodes. So lymphatic drainage. Superficial occipital lymph nodes receive lymph from the occipital region of the skull and the back of the neck. Efferent vessels pass to a deep occipital lymph node which drains into deep cervical nodes along the spinal accessory nerve. So what are the clinical importance of this triangle and the contents? We've already seen what are the main contents present there, like the artery, vein, and the brachial plexus. So what are its clinical importance? The brachial plexus can be injured in the lower part of the triangle by such diverse means as stab wounds, bullets, excessive abnormal traction at childbirth, falls upon the shoulder, or other sources of blood trauma. Next is the subclavian artery and the brachial plexus can be compressed as they cross the first rib posterior to the anterior scalene muscle. Thoracic inlet syndrome. The spinal accessory nerve is closely related to the deep posterior cervical nerves. If an abscess is present in this area, you have to make an incision Lincoln's method just through the skin, and you use a sinus forceps so that use a hemostat to penetrate and drain the abscess. We have to preserve this nerve. So you just use a sinus forceps and drain the abscess. That's it. So what is the use of this method? This method avoids injury to the nerve with resultant wasting of the trapezius and drooping of the shoulder. Next, we have seen part of external jugular vein is also present there. So the external jugular vein passes downwards from the area of the angle of the mandible to the middle of the clavicle. Just above the clavicle, the vein pierces the investing fascia and drains into the subclavian vein. In this area, if a penetrating neck injury has occurred, with the division of the vein, this can allow the air to be sucked into the vein because the deep fascia is firmly adherent to the venous wall, thereby keeping the lumen open. Okay? Due to this, this can cause a fatal air embolism, leading to even death of the patient. So we have seen all the structures and everything. Now comes the differential diagnosis of the swellings in the neck. So broad classification, like for the etiology part, obviously the swellings will be first thing congenital. Either it might be due to infections, traumatic, neoplastic, vascular, idiopathic or iatrogenic. Next is the toxic or metabolic causes. So you need not use your whole brain to remember this. This is the common etiology for everything. Definitely congenital. Next, either due to any of the infections part, it might be a trauma leading to hematoma. Next, malignancy, neoplastic, vascular aneurysms, idiopathic or iatrogenic, toxic or metabolic causes. So these are the basic etiological causes. Coming to the differential diagnosis. So differential diagnosis of midline neck swellings. So you have to remember in your brain all these differential diagnoses. Okay. So first to remember this, you have to remember the contents present there. So midline, what are the contents present? And the differential diagnosis. Ludwig's angina. We have seen submental triangle constitutes of about submental lymph nodes. So any lymphadenopathy. Next is the sublingual dermoid. You know thyroglossal cyst, subhyoid bursa, thyroid swellings. If it is an isthmus swelling, it will be present in the midline. Next, another main structure presents a pre-laryngeal and pre-tracheal lymph nodes. Next is the suprasternal lymph nodes, midline dermoids and likewise. So any midline neck swellings, you should remember all these BDs. Now coming to the lateral swellings. In lateral swellings, first from the submandibular triangle. So you know what are the major structures present in the submandibular triangle. So what are the differential diagnoses occur? Differential diagnosis we have to take into account. So obviously there will be submandibular gland. So gland enlargement, lymph nodes will be present. So lymphadenopathies, plunging granula and jaw tumors. Nerve is also present. Neuromas can also occur, but it does not occur usually in that area and it's very rare. Next from the carotid triangle. Carotid aneurysm, carotid body tumor, branchial cyst, lateral lobe of the thyroid swelling, sternomastoid swelling, lymph nodes. Posterior triangle. Obviously, first is the most important lymphadenopathies, cystic hygroma, the pharyngeal pus, Jenkins diverticulum, subclavian artery aneurysm, cervical rib, lateral abdomen thyroid. So again, the midline neck swellings. What are the cystic swelling you expect, and what are the solid swellings? Sublingual cystics are sublingual dermoid, submental dermoid, thyroglossal cyst, subhyoid bursal cyst, thyroid ischemic cystic nodule, cold abscess in space of Burns, laryngoscope. Solid includes lymphograndular swellings, lymphadenopathies, thyroid ischemic nodule, bony growth from the sternum. So, rule of 80. 80% of non-thyroid neck masses are neoplastic. So, 80% of neoplastic neck masses occurs in the males. 80% of neoplastic neck masses are malignant. 80% of malignant neck masses, usually there will be metastasis. So 80% of these metastatic neck masses are from primary sites above the clavicle. Okay. Just if you want to remember, you can remember, or else you can take this. So some general considerations. Patient age 0 to 15 years. Usually there will be 90% benign swellings. Young adults 16 to 40 also, usually there will be benign swellings. Late adults more than 40, usually this applies to the rule of 80s. So location. Congenital masses usually consistent in locations. Metastatic, there will be key to primary lesion. Next one more is rule of thumb. Neck nodes are very common in children. Small, non-enlarging mobile nodes are common in the younger age group. An adult with a lump in the lateral neck has cancer until proved otherwise. Okay. Any persistent or enlarging neck mass in adults warrants further investigation. So we'll see about some of the differential diagnoses. Submental lymphadenitis. Submental lymph nodes drain the superficial tissue below the chin, central part of the lower lip, adjoining gum, anterior part of the floor of the mouth, and tip of the tongue. Infection in these areas leads to submental lymphadenitis. Next is the submandibular swelling. Lies in the submandibular triangle, superficial to mylohyoid and hyoglossus muscles, between the two bellies of the digastric muscle. Deep part is in the floor of the mouth and deep to the mylohyoid. So submandibular swellings. Rule of two in submandibular salivary gland. Two parts are divided by the, that is the superficial and the deep is divided by the mylohyoid muscle. Two conditions, tumor and stone. Two superficial nerves, cervical and mandibular branch of facial nerve. Two deep nerves, lingual and hypoglossal nerves. Incision is 2 to 4 centimeters below the mandible, and I already previously told you, facial artery should be ligated there. See, the facial artery is ligated at two places. Okay. This is usual. This is the rule of two in submandibular salivary gland swelling. So you can see this. Submandibular gland swelling. Next, the branchial cyst and the branchial fistula. Remember the position of the branchial cyst. Okay. It will be in the upper one third. So, branchial cyst arises from the remnants of the second branchial cleft. Persistent second cleft is called a cervical sinus, which eventually gets sequestered to form branchial cyst. It is a congenital swelling, but usually presents in second or third decade of life. Okay. It is located beneath the anterior border of the upper one third of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It is smooth, soft, or tensely cystic. Tensely cystic is hardened palpation, fluctuant and translucent. It contains fat globules and cholesterol crystals. It is neither compressible nor reducible. Compressibility and reducibility occurs in, where does the compressibility occurs? In vascular swellings. Okay. Reducibility you see in the hernias. So you can see this involving the upper one third. This will be the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and this involves the upper one third. See, branchial cleft cyst. So next is the cystic fibroma. It is due to sequestration of a portion of jugular lymph sac from the lymphatic system. Most commonly present in the posterior triangle of the neck, 75%. Other sites are axilla, cheek, macroglossia, groin, mediastinum. Anywhere the lymphatic system is not working properly, or if any obstruction is present in the lymphatics, then you can see the cystic fibroma. The lymph will be collection in that particular area. Cysts have mosaic pattern with larger cysts near the surface and smaller cysts in the deeper planes. Each cyst contains clear lymph which doesn't coagulate. Swelling is smooth, soft, fluctuant, compressible, and brilliantly transilluminant. Swelling may rapidly increase in size, causing respiratory obstruction. It is a very dangerous sign. It may also get infected, forming an abscess. See, cystic fibrosis. Commonly presents in the neonates and very early age. Next comes the carotid body tumor, also known as potato tumor, chemodectoma, non-chromaffin paraganglioma. It arises from carotid body, which is a chemoreceptor. It usually occurs in people living at high altitude exposed to chronic hypoxia. It is located at the level of hyoid bone in the carotid triangle. It is vertically placed, round, firm potato-like swelling. It is usually unilateral, smooth, firm and pulsatile. The swelling moves in side-to-side direction but not vertically. So this causes compressions over the carotids, which may lead to transient ischemic edema. It can extend into cranial cavity as a dumbbell joint. Blight sign is widening and splaying of carotid artery with tumor blush on an angiogram. See, this is the tumor site. Chemodectoma. This one. By seeing the image, we might not tell the accurate diagnosis, but with the total examination, we have to come to the accurate diagnosis. It is also known as potato tumor. So, vascular causes for necrosis include vascular aneurysms, dissections, or malformations. Carotid blowout can be caused post-operative complications, aggressive infections, invasive tumors, or radiation therapy. Vascular masses tend to develop rapidly over minutes to hours and may be pulsatile. Okay. And you can see compressibility. See, you can see the normal carotid artery. See, the lining of the artery is compressed. Okay. So, this is the dissection is present in this one. So, the blood is pulled out here and the lining is very much narrowed. See, you can see this one normal and see this narrowed. Next, coming to sternomastoid tumor. This is a misnomer. It is not a tumor. It is due to the birth injury leading to hematoma. Okay. Organizing itself to form sternomastoid tumor. The swelling is smooth, hard, non-tender, and adherent to the muscle. It causes chin point to opposite side and head tilt to the same side. So the baby will be tilting towards the same side of the hematoma, and the chin will be pointed to the opposite side. Long-standing cases can cause compensatory squint and cervical scoliosis. Torticollis occurs. See, edema and necrosis in the lower third of the sternomastoid. See, the baby is tilted. You can see here. There will be ischemia and fibrosis of the muscle. Okay, from this we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.